So I hope you will leave today fully appreciative of all that energy that's being shared together. I want to start today with a sneak preview for you. Every year, Unity School publishes a Lenten guide following the outline of Charles Fillmore's Keep It True Lent, but inviting current ministers to supply the copy. And for 2017, they asked me to write the introduction, and then I said I will take whatever days no one else takes. There are 4 or 5 of us who do it. And somehow I always end up with elimination. Why do you think that is? Should I be looking at that? So, because of course, given their deadlines, I had to turn it in earlier this month. So I thought I'd start this morning, because that's our topic, by sharing what you will be reading in that booklet next year. We sometimes try to accumulate new spiritual ideas as we might accumulate new clothing or shoes. We squeeze them into an already packed mental closet where we may have a hard time finding them when we need them. That's why elimination is one of the essential 12 powers. The ideas, beliefs, and fears that are packed into our consciousness need to be evaluated. Are they appropriate to the new dimension of spiritual understanding that we're achieving through this Lenten process? Does some of the old need to be released to make room for the new? There is no judgment involved in this process of elimination. The old ideas have served us well earlier on our path. After all, they got us this far. We release them in deep appreciation for the ways in which they served us. And we give thanks that there is now ample room for the new ideas of empowerment and infinite love that are eager to enter our consciousness. And the affirmation for the day is, today I appreciate the flow of life in my consciousness. I dissolve all resistance as outdated beliefs and fears disappear. I welcome the new ideas and deeper understanding that replace them. So elimination is a more important power, I think, than it receives credit for being. And in that brief thing that I wrote as I reread it this week, I see a very interesting process at work, and we've talked about this a little bit on some of the other Sundays. That process of evaluating and releasing doesn't end when you find your way to unity, or to new thought. You know, Charles Fillmore wrote Keep It True Lent 100 years ago. It's spiritually, because spiritual ideas are eternal, it is as valid today as it was on the day it was first published. And if we're doing anything right, we have to have reached the point where we're ready to rephrase or re-see some of those energies from a different perspective. And I think this particular power is one of them. Recently we talked about the difference between judgment, which is the early New Thought, call it the old New Thought word, and discernment. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. They name the same power, but there's a difference in energy, isn't there? You can feel it. This week, we have 3 words, I think, to look at, one of which I only discovered as I was preparing this talk. Let's start with the difference between renunciation and elimination. It's kind of the same difference in energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Renunciation is sort of accusatory, it's judgmental, it's, you need to renounce your sinful ways. You know? Elimination is much gentler. It's not judgmental, it's time to get rid of it. What I realized as I was preparing this is that we've moved beyond elimination, I think. And we've come to understand this power as release. Release. Because again and again, as we talk about these 12 powers, what we're seeing is that they are much easier to allow, to work with, to express than we might have thought. We come in our spiritual path as if we have to do a lot of hard work to stay on it, or to earn it, or deserve it, or find it, or keep it. We just have to allow it. We just have to allow that guidance to move us forward and absolutely know that we're never off the path. I love a Hindu teacher, I can't remember who it was, and one of his pupils came up to him and said, "Oh, teacher, I just don't know what to do in my life, and this is happening, and that is happening, and I could do this, but I could do that, and I should do this, and I should do that, and it's going to really make a huge difference." And he said, "Do it or don't do it, but get on with it." If we stop and stand in anguish over what the next step should be, we're not getting anywhere. Whatever choice we make will be our spiritual path. It will work out. They may be different in terms of how complicated they get or how confusing, but get on with it. Don't stop and think, I can't move from this until I've answered this question, or made this choice, or done this deed, or eliminated this negativity in my mind. Get on with it. Just get on with it. Charles Fillmore says that the power of elimination is associated with the Apostle Thaddeus. He nowhere explains why that is so. And I know nothing about Thaddeus, so we're not going to talk about that. He also says that its physical center, you won't be surprised to hear, well, maybe you will, is the bowels. What's interesting is that it seems to me that at that time, the early 20th century, people were much more willing to talk about bodily functions than they are today. Fillmore quotes one teacher, Lyman Beecher, as writer and minister, who was bidding goodbye to a friend and said, "Worship God, be even-tempered, and keep your bowels open." And Fillmore says the mind, like the bowels, should be open and free. So one of the things that he liked to encourage by making these associations is that if you are, say, you are having trouble with your bowels, what are you hanging on to? What are you holding on to in mind? In mind. If you're having trouble with your gut, what guidance are you refusing to and pretending you're not seeing? What are you ignoring in your life? What we release, eliminate, renounce are thoughts. Thoughts, that's all. They're thoughts. And there's a huge difference between ideas and thoughts. Ideas are spirit ideas, spiritual ideas. Thoughts are of our mortal mind. And that doesn't make them bad or dangerous or wrong, it just means it's helpful to be aware. If you accept the analogy that Carlos used last week, which I would, with some mild alterations, because a bubble is a closed entity and none of us are closed off from the oldest. That's why I like a parenthesis in eternity, Joe Goldsmith's term. But Fillmore says thoughts must be digested in a manner similar to the way in which food is digested. An eagerness to gain knowledge without proper digestion and assimilation ends in mental congestion. And I can certainly look back and I suspect many of you can too. You'll see times when I have rushed enthusiastically after a new idea without stopping to digest it first. And the result was blockage, congestion. So if we're talking about thoughts, and Fillmore says thoughts are things. They're not just wisps that come through and go away. They are things. So they must take up space. If they're things, they must take up space. And since we're dealing with a mortal mind, that space is somewhat limited, right? Even though they haven't yet plumbed the depths of the human brain, but still, it's important sometimes to clean house, to send some of those thoughts off to goodwill, so that we can make room for something new. Like when it's like, maybe some of you have had the experience, I haven't, but it's a familiar image. When you send a kid off to college or out into the world, and he or she is hardly at the door when the bedroom becomes a man cave or a sewing room or serves another purpose. It doesn't need to be a bedroom anymore. And so it's possible to turn it into something else. Until, of course, the kid loses his job and comes home, but that's another thing. Fillmore sees, when we turn to the Bible, Fillmore sees elimination writ big time in the story of Noah. We're going to clear out the negativity. Too much negativity has accumulated in the mind. Doesn't affect the spirit, doesn't affect the truth of who we are. But it affects what we believe is the truth of who we are. It doesn't affect what's eternal and important, but it affects what we think is important. And sometimes, just like with the story of the flood, and he doesn't pretend it's a literal story, sometimes you really need a massive clearing out to make room for new ideas. And it's sometimes difficult because all the old ideas are not necessarily painful or dark or uncomfortable. They can be very dear, ideas we've held forever, and we really are reluctant to let them go. And yet, anything held onto creates friction, and friction creates pain, and pain creates limitation and holds us back. We don't have to, and this is a great part about moving even from elimination to release. We don't have to decide which thoughts are important or not important, which should go or should not go. We have to be willing for whatever needs to happen. We just need to be willing to let that happen. And then we will learn as they go. But the mistake is to hang on to, oh no, I don't want to let go of that one. That's too precious, that's too dear. Interestingly enough, just as an aside, interesting to me, Fillmore associates, he was a wild thinker for his day and all the way through his lifetime. There are a lot of his later writings. He died in 52, I think. There are a lot of his later writings that have never been published that were locked up because humanity says they're too crazy, they're too out there, nobody would quite grasp it. So, but he relates the story of Noah to the story of Atlantis. Another myth, another story. And there are many versions of it, there are many interpretations of it. But he sees it as a physicalization, again, of negative. It had become a center for negative thinking, a center for purely mortal priorities and choices, and it had to go. For the sake of the whole planet, it had to go. Now he says that this was the early 20th century when science was not what it is today. He said that he thinks that perhaps where Atlantis went was it was thrown out and became the moon. I don't think it was thrown out and became the moon, but it's an interesting idea. And I love, I love Fillmore so much, even his eccentricities, even the things that just don't jive anymore. You can understand what he meant, and you can understand the energy from which he's speaking. difference. He's moving, I think, from metaphysics to mysticism, and that would be an interesting discussion, don't you think?
Yeah.
The difference between metaphysics and mysticism. I think perhaps just as we move from, this is my opinion, of course, just as we move from religion to metaphysics, I think we are encouraged to move from metaphysics to mysticism, taking with us everything that metaphysics offers and helps us understand, and moving it into a space that says, I don't understand it all. I am open to there being so much more than I can explain or understand.
What is the distinction between metaphysics and mysticism?
Well, metaphysics, I think, is more scientific. I'm not sure every scientist would agree with that statement, but it's more exact, it's more precise, it's principles like these. Mysticism is an openness to possibility. This is good. Metaphysics still involves the mind, because the mind wants to understand. It wants to read the words and understand the words and argue with the words and think about the words. Metaphysics is, the mind has nothing to do with, because the mind doesn't understand it at all. It's moving beyond that need to understand and reaching a willingness and an ability to accept. Without being frightened, people get scared of mysticism because their mind says, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense to my mind. But it makes sense to my heart. It makes sense to my spirit, to my capital S self, as Carlos would say. And when we get to this point, I think, as it did for Fillmore, it leads us especially to some of the Eastern writers. And I was happy to turn there this week. Charles Fillmore was fascinated by world religions. He read hugely and widely in virtually every religion around the world. He never left his Christian base, his Bible base, but he was eager to see the ways in which other writings reaffirmed the same truth. And he was a very powerful part of the first Parliament of World Religions in Chicago in 1893. And the sort of breakout star, if you would, of that conference was a man named Swami Vivekananda. He was a devotee of Ramakrishna, and it became his work to do, his spiritual work to do, to bring Eastern ideas and thoughts to the Western world. And he really understood that that was his to do. And his teachings, his writings are just wonderful. They're filled with light and love, and they don't take themselves seriously at all. This is what he said about some people who misuse the idea of renunciation. Those who deny themselves, live in the forest, and chew the cud of unsatisfied desires, don't you know that, are not true renouncers. Live in the midst of the battle of life. Anyone can keep calm in a cave or when asleep. Stand in the whirl and madness of action and reach your center. If you have found the center, you cannot be moved. That really resonated for me as I watched the news this week and picked up newspapers and just found myself wondering, how have we gotten to this point? Why are things so divisive, and why is it becoming crystal clear that the election, whatever happens in the election, is not going to answer anything, because whatever side loses is going to be resistant far beyond the inauguration of the next president. So he's saying really, you can't really release in an energy of sacrifice. Because if you feel like you're sacrificing, you're saying this is still important to me, and I'm reluctantly giving it up. I shouldn't have to, but I am. Sense that I'm somehow losing something, and release has to be just the opposite. You gain space, you gain new ideas as they come in. And of course, also, you can't release something you don't have. I love this. A man came to the Swami, he says, and said, "My business has failed, my wife has left me, I have no home. I want to join you and renounce the world." And Swami Vivekananda says, "It sounds to me like the world has renounced you." So we don't move forward on our spiritual path through suffering. We allow this, we accept suffering as a lesson that we can learn from. But we're never called upon to experience pain in order to move forward spiritually. Can you remember that? Can you really believe that? We are never called upon to experience pain, to experience a sense of sacrifice at all. Jesus said it is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom and give it to you abundantly. Abundantly. No, drop by drop. This is have you earned it or not, or how much of it have you earned? It's, are you open to it or are you not open to it? Are you willing for it or are you not? We solve problems in the mind very often, we say, by a process of elimination. The things that don't compute, we remove and we see what's left. And this is kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's looking and saying, that hasn't fit for a long time. That idea doesn't work anymore. I need to see it differently. Not that that was untrue, not that that was a lie or a false idea, but that was then and this is now. And if I'm doing my work, I'm going to see last year's or yesterday's ideas and say, wait a minute, that's not where I am now. I need to be willing to let go. And so many people are afraid that if they let go, they won't know. Nothing will replace it, and they'll be left without the ideas that they feel they need. Another Eastern writer I turn to a lot is Krishnamurti. And he wrote, "Find out for yourself what are the possessions and ideas that you do not desire. By knowing what you do not want, by elimination, you will unburden the mind, and only then will it understand the essential, which is always there." And what I like about that is that it says you can trust your feelings. You can trust your desires. If something really doesn't appeal to you, it's worth looking at, and saying, am I choosing this? Am I believing this? Am I doing this because I think I have to? Or because I think it'll impress other people? As I do my spiritual work now, I tell you people, I am embarrassed to look back and see how much energy I have devoted in this lifetime to impressing other people, or satisfying other people, or getting other people to say that I'm okay, instead of finding it within myself. And that goes way into my years as minister too, by the way. It doesn't end when you suddenly discover these principles. We need to trust our desires. We need to be open to what we not only think, but what we feel, what we believe, what we understand, and trust it. Don't go out and try to find somebody else to give you permission to believe that. Trust it. Trust it. Or if something seems, and we've all been through this, each and every one of us, I'm sure. If something we've always been taught and believed suddenly begins to seem not quite comfortable anymore. Like this, for me it was the Catholic Church. It was the structure of religion and the judgmental quality of religion, and going to confession, which is a form of renunciation indeed. And I didn't know anything about the thought. I couldn't tell you why things seemed different, but I was willing to release. I was willing to let go. And I did indeed wander in the wilderness for quite a while before I found my way to unity. But that was all valuable wandering too, as I see it now. So it's really trusting ourselves and really not relying on permission from God, from a church, from a minister, from anybody, a teacher, from anybody, but your own inner guidance. We don't overcome outer resistance. Outer resistance I would call like temptations, those things in the outer that distract us and appeal to us and seem to pull us off our spiritual focus. We don't overcome outer resistance to become spiritual beings or to achieve a spiritual purpose. We turn inward and find the peace that passes all understanding. In that peace, we allow these 12 powers to easily and joyfully create the kingdom. Create the kingdom according to our unique spiritual purpose. We are all here to lift our collective consciousness to a higher frequency. Each of us has a unique and specific role in doing that. You have to be, at the same time, open to the greater truth and also open to your own part of it. What is yours to do. And it's, no matter what it is, it begins to feel very comfortable. It may be, you may discover that your spiritual purpose is maybe smaller than your ego had in mind, but it's perfect. Because you are fulfilling your spiritual purpose, and ultimately nothing else but that is going to make us happy. So, the power of illumination, we're almost done. This has been an amazing year, for me at least, as we move through these powers and discover what they have to offer us in terms of understanding who we are today. Who we are today. And it's important, I mean, I've done them in a particular order. There is no order to the 12 powers. They are within you, all of them, all the time, always. Available to help, available to guide, available to assist you in the freedom, achieving the freedom that allows you to just release whatever isn't yours and focus on what is. And the result will be the 12th power, which we will talk about here next in November, which is life. The power of life. And this is a surprising power indeed. Mr. Trimble got in quite a bit of trouble for his understanding of the power of life. So I hope you'll be here for that. Bring your friends and let's fill all these seats if we choose to do that, or let's find a place for us to express that is perfect for our size if we choose to do that. We are open. We are receptive. We release any preconceptions of what unity in the city has to look like, or has to become, or who it has to impress. We are open to who we are and what is ours to do individually and as this amazing spiritual community. You will never know the power you have in my life and the gratitude I feel for all of you. Blessings.